welcome to the RTO Show. I'm your host, Pete Shau, and today I've got something special for you. I've got Paul Adamson here from Clover, and he's got some things that he wants to talk to us about. And the truth is, I have been dying to talk to him about it. We got a little gap there when I got sick, and so we didn't get caught up like I wanted to. And now I have the opportunity. Paul's right in front of me. Opportunity to kind of talk to Paul about everything that Clover has to offer, because we did meet in RTO World last year, right, Paul?
We did.
So there was a whole brand new booth. I was busy as anything because we had the live show last year. So I kind of caught him in the beginning and caught him at the very end. Now we're catching up because the truth is there's a lot that he's got going on, including a new partnership with L2 to get some things out to you. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Paul Adamson from Clover. How you doing today? How's everything going where you're at?
Pete, I'm doing well. Unlike many parts of the U.S. right now, I am above the level of freezing and not impacted by snow because I live in Texas. So I can't even say that we got a little cold because everybody would just laugh at us, but we got Texas cold. And so I've been, suffering in my short sleeve shirt. And when I go outside, I, put shoes on because, I could get a little chilly outside. So other than that, no, really good.
We understand. We definitely understand. So Clover has something a little bit special. Now, I've heard these things in the past, but come rent to own, you've been here for a little while. You've stuck around. That means that you're serious. Now, I'm going to ask you some serious questions because I really want to get to that. But let's start from the ground up. We want to know from the ground up. What does Clover do, and how do you expect it to impact the RTO industry?
Sure. In a few little sound bites, Clover is the returns partner to leading brands. Right. So, and I know you probably have never done this, but somebody in the audience has bought something that they didn't really mean to buy, and then they returned it. And that's kind of where my business starts. Right. So, brands like LG, like Breville, like others, need a partner that when a consumer is returning a product, either that they bought online, direct to consumer from the brand's website or through retail, it has to go somewhere. And we are the party that then takes that product, does a certified remanufacturing refurbishment process, and then puts it back into the market. So we're really kind of saving, doing a few things, right? Protecting their pockets, right? Because that cost to handle returns is pretty high. As U.S. consumers, we return a lot of stuff safely in the categories we touch. It's typically about 10% of what gets bought gets sold, and I think we're all a little guilty of the occasional, I've had a couple glasses of wine and I ordered that and I didn't check with my spouse. And so it's going to need to go back.
We need to put that as a definition in the Amazon return box. Too much wine.
Too much wine. Yeah.
Too much wine.
It'd probably be shocking how many people would actually check that box. Right. So, protect their costs to serve those returns. Protect, from a sustainability standpoint, keeping stuff out of the landfill. But, truthfully, and I think this is where we've loved the rent to own space so much, is giving the next consumer access to what we like to call aspirational brands at prices that they can afford. Right. So, as a, kid of the 80s and 90s, there was definitely, a few cars that I would always have wanted. A new DVD player. If refurb had been a big part of, the 90s for products, I probably could have bought a DVD player earlier in life, right? Then I was able to go afford it, but it wasn't a thing. And consumers are so much more comfortable with it today, right? If you have, any type of mobility product, an iPhone or some sort of Android phone, and it breaks during the warranty period, you're typically getting a refurbished version as a replacement, not a new one. And so, you've got kind of this group of folks that have grown up understanding that to buy a refurbished product is good, not only good for their pocketbooks, good for the environment, and it's just acceptable now. And, when we think about like rent to own in kind of this space where people are today, it's becoming even more relevant, right? Because consumers today, they don't think in terms of like ownership anymore. They think in terms of like access and flexibility, right? Everybody's got a streaming service. They're subscribed to things. They have set upgrade paths for their product. And that's how people live today. And rent to own was doing that before anybody else, right? Giving access. So it's actually really cool to be part of this space.
All right, so let's go back to the word refurbished. Now, when we
Sure.
say that, just like rent to own, sometimes we got to battle that term. What does that term
Hmm.
actually mean? Because usually when somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Pete, I have something refurbished," it means that you were using something and it broke, it shut down, something happened to it, didn't work right. They returned it to a manufacturer. It got, a fuse was changed out, a board was fixed, a part was replaced or whatever, and then it was sent back out into the retail world. Is that how refurbished is, or is there more to it than that term?
So I like to break it down, not to be too nuanced, but between refurbished and certified refurbished, right? So, you can refurbish a product at your home, right? If you probably every year when you pull your lawnmower out, you go through and you change out the air filter, you drain the gas lines, you may clean the carb. You are actually refurbishing that mower, right? Maybe changing out the blade, etc. But you're not certified by the brand owner to do it, right? So that certification is really the difference, right? It was inspected, tested to a defined standard. Any of its worn or missing parts are replaced. It's clearly graded, right, to its condition. It has performance testing that is validated by our brand partner, and then it's backed up by an actual warranty. So when you think in terms of certified refurbished, what you're getting is a product that in a lot of cases has gotten more attention than the original new version of it. Because if you think about product coming down an assembly line, human intervention may happen only 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 units. A certified refurbished product, every single unit is getting touched the same way. In my world, my world's interesting, right? I'm bringing order to chaos for product that's coming back from these retailers, and I'm building out, raw goods. My raw good for manufacturing is somebody's returned item. And so I've got to, create systems that allow me to test it and certify it to that original standard that they can then be proud of, right? Because they're putting that product name never changes. It said LG when it went out the first time. It's going to say LG the second time. So the consumer who's buying that product, they know it's LG, right? And it's a brand they trust. They've built trust in that brand, and we can't harm that trust.
So help me out here. I want to make sure I got this. Walk me through a product. So I have an LG, whatever the case that is. And today, let's just use an LG cell phone. Not necessarily what you're getting, but let's just say it's an LG cell phone, right? I have an LG cell phone. It's not working. I go ahead and do that service, right? So let's say I get another phone. That's working. I'm good. I walk away. Can you describe to me what happens to that phone in the life of that phone as it goes into whatever service area, whatever LG, provider is? What goes on with that phone after that fact? And then how does it end up at Clover?
Yeah. So if you think about, and we can make it even generically, product based, right? So you're a consumer, you bought an item, you don't want it, you feel it had an issue, it doesn't meet your needs, whatever. You take it back to the retailer. As far as you know, job done, I either have a replacement, I have my money back. That product then is now entering the reverse supply chain. Everybody understands forward supply chain, right? Design and build and distribute and everything else. The reverse supply chain is I'm going from a retailer store to typically a retailer's consolidation warehouse. So if you think in terms of big retailers, everybody understands, if you returned it to Walmart, it goes from a Walmart store to one of 5 Walmart consolidated return centers. And they're scanning that thing. It's moving through its flows. That way Walmart can get credit on it from the brand owner. And then it's moving to its next station, which is typically being consolidated with its brothers and sisters and then sent to me for its next steps in the process. Right. And I'm receiving it. I'm verifying its condition at receipt. And then I'm moving it into an agreed set of testing protocols. And then I'm also replacing parts that need to be replaced and getting it back into the condition the brand wanted it back in market as. Mobility products, like you brought up, cell phones, it's a very interesting one, right? Because that product can go back into market as up to 5 different grades, right? There's a channel for all of it, like, essentially basically new, slightly blemished, heavily blemished, a blemish only on the screen, but the rest is fine, all the way through to like heavily scratched up. versus in a lot of the home goods. If you think about the nice thing about a cell phone is you take that item, you talk, you text, you put it in your pocket, right? It's hidden away. If I were to sell you a remanufactured or refurbished Vitamix blender, that sits on your counter. That has to look right, right? So a brand like Vitamix has very defined criteria for the visual and performance of that unit to ensure that you're going to be proud that it sits on your counter. Other brands may say, I'm okay with one that is good to sit on the counter, and I'll take another grade that they're going to want to put it away in the cabinet in between uses. Still fully functional, looks great, but when you're walking by it, you can see some scratches.
Now, is Clover, so Clover is the one that does the testing. So when it comes to you, you do the testing. And when I say you, I mean Clover. And then they give you access to the parts to replace, refurbish, and then test.
Yep.
So we have somebody that is somewhere out there in the ether testing this. Now, to just make sure that we're all on the same page, this is a certified technician. This is not Bob that we just got, the other days. He's certified in whatever, model and brand that he's servicing to make sure it's 100%, correct?
Yeah. I mean, the way you build trust, with consumers in a refurbished product is by having a very rigorous process, right? So we have, just in the US, not even including in our Mexico facility, we've got about 50 engineers. And when a product is going to be brought into production, they are doing the complete review of their product. They're building what we call a DMI, or a detailed manufacturing instruction, with visual aids and the complete BOM for the unit, right? So when that product hits the production line, there is a process that is defined for how you test it at the front of the line, how you blow that thing apart into all of its components, where they go for all their separate testing and cleaning and certifications, and then how it comes back together to be built into a refurbished sellable product. And then it gets, new labeling and packaging, clearly defined as refurbished, right? Because what we don't want to do is we never want to confuse a consumer, because that's a terrible experience. If they think they're buying new, you're going to tell once you open it, it's not new, right? Typically different packaging, right? You don't find, molded styrofoam in a refurbished product, because you need big, expensive molds, and you're not doing that for the refurb side. So you want to make sure you're building that trust at all stages, and it is clearly defined as a refurbished unit. But you want a great out-of-box experience as well. That consumer needs to feel connected to that product that they paid money for, right? Or they rented because they want to make their life better because of, the product that they got.
So, in the rent-own industry, we're always looking for the best price, because obviously a rent-own is going to be a little bit higher for the services that we include in the agreement. The free delivery, the free service, the ability to pay over a certain amount of time, the same as cash, whatever the case is. So what in a percentage base, what is the difference between one of your certified refurbished products and the same thing that came out of the factory brand new? Is it 25% difference? Is it a 30% cost difference? What is it on? And I want to say maybe across your 3 to 5 most usable SKUs that you think rent-own is going to use. What would you say that the percentage savings is on a brand new product versus what we would get certified refurbished?
Yeah. So, the operators in the RTO space are going to see a 25, maybe up to a 40%, delta between new and that certified refurbished. Still with a warranty, still with a great out-of-box experience for their buyer, their consumer.
Okay. So what is, and I don't know how many you have, because I know you have quite a few. When I went to the booth, there was quite a few things over there, man. But let's say we're talking about the top, 5 things that you have. What can, as an RTO dealer, if I went to Clover, what are your 5 best-selling items that I want to put on my counter that you say, not only are they name brand, not only are they certified, but these are probably the hottest sellers that we have going on right now?
So, I look at it from a bucket standpoint of, not every refurbished product, needs to generate a contract, right? Some is for traffic, some is just going to be an attachment sale. We had some of the buyers from the last show that bottom as a thank you for closing out a contract. And so those thank you for closing out a contract were kind of an entry level NutriBullet blender that,
Okay.
from a cost standpoint, they could step into for, sub $20. Very nice, full color packaging, great consumer experience. And it's a great thank you at the end of the day. The other pieces that I think are impactful that we're seeing great traction on is our GE Opal countertop ice makers, right? Because it's an aspirational brand. It is a great product that somebody's going to want in their home, right? Everybody loves that little Sonic nugget ice, right? At the end of the day.
That is the crack that's going around. I mean, people want something really, really bad. It used to be like Tickle Me Elmo. Now it's like the ice machine. My wife's even talked to me about it. Like it's those little cubed icy. I hate to say it, but I use it too at work.
It's so good.
It is so good though. I agree with you. Paul's got the deals. Paul's got the deals, guys.
Yeah, and it's a great product, right? And being able to take advantage of that is a huge thing. So GE Opal ice makers. The other thing that I think is a great, benefit to the RTO space is room AC, because, folks, they want air conditioning when it's important to have air conditioning, right? What you don't necessarily need is air conditioning now, but come June, July, August, you do. And so being able to provide something that can be a shorter term rental period at a better price point, I think is a huge win for RTO because, it's a strong product category. It typically has a higher MSRP. Being able to save money on the front side allows them to maybe change up the economics for that rental period, that whatever that rental rate is going to be. And still deliver a great product to their consumer. So, the other pieces, and we've had some, I'm not going to call it mixed reviews, but really it's depending on, I think, geography, is our floor care items. One of the fastest growing categories in floor care is floor washers. So items that can vacuum and essentially clean the floor at the same time. Typically have, built-in heaters. So they're applying hot water, with detergent to the floor to do your cleaning. And we've seen some of the RTO space loving them, saying it's a great product. And others are like, they forget to clean out the unit. Then it comes back and, now I've got my staff cleaning that thing before they can rent it again. So, I think for us, where we're going to spend most of our time is in that premium countertop appliance space, right? So, the nugget ice makers, the higher end espresso machines, some of the more durable home items. So room AC, so portable or window ACs. And then we're going to be looking to bring on additional, call it, just attachment sale items, some of the blender products that work really well. For us, we're Vitamix authorized reseller for the refurbished product into the rent to own space. And so being able to give a great value on a $700, countertop blender, it can be purchased for several $100s off is, I think, a big win.
Hi, I'm Pete Shau. You may know me from the RTO Show Podcast, but today I'm doing something a little bit different. April and Wow Brands have launched a special project to bring the story of our industry to life like never before. They've asked me to sit down with some of the true legends of rent-to-own, capturing their stories, their impact, and their vision for the future. And now I get to share those conversations with you straight from the legends themselves. All of this leads to something groundbreaking though, a new book, The Rent-to-Own Revolution, A Definitive History of Advocacy and Consumer Access, written by APRO CEO Charles Smitherman and Wow Brands CEO Brian Krast. The book explores the grassroots of RTO, the advocacy that has defined it, and the future that we're building together. Here's where you come in. We're giving away free copies once the book is released. Just head over to the RTORevolution.com and sign up for a chance to receive a copy in early 2026. Don't miss the chance to be among the first to hold this piece of RTO history. That's RTORevolution.com. Check it out and become a part of RTO history. when you say the word refurbished or certified refurbished, it means to me in my head, this is the way I see it. There is a certain supply that comes back, like you said, maybe 10% that comes back. So if I sold 100, I would get 10 back. Now, let's say that I've got a few dealers and I'm standing in front of a few dealers and they're like, hey, man, I really like this product. I love the ice machine. My wife told me that I got to have that. I love the giveaway idea. I love the room AC. I love the espresso machine. Now, let's say that catches fire, right? Everybody's excited. Everybody wants to buy it. But how is the supply versus, if I wanted new, and I'm just saying, and whether you buy containers or you buy shipments, you know that it's going to be manufactured and sent. That's the way it works. With refurbished product, there is no guarantee that it, if let's say it's like Toyota, it's just a great product. It doesn't come back very often. What do you do in that sense? I mean, how do you judge what's going to be bought and how much supply you have for the demand that you could be creating?
So we do a lot of work, with our clients ahead of time, right? To understand what is their forward-looking 12-month sales plan by SKU, by channel. And we have the information to help us understand by retailer what their average return rate is by category. And so we can actually predict and forecast out what their returns are going to be all the way to a single SKU level. And we also know the return patterns. We know when returns are heavier. I mean, easiest thing to relate that back to is room ACs come August, September, October. I'm getting 85% of everything I'm going to get in a year in that period, with probably 50% of it just coming in September. But, other items are less seasonal, right? I mean, a Nutrable, a blender has relatively consistent return rates. But we also know because, hey, they sell at Costco, they sell at Target, they sell at Walmart. We know which ones have a longer return tail, right? So Costco, very much in favor of their warehouse members. If you have an issue, they're gonna take that product back a year down the road, 2 years down the road, wherever.
Yeah, I've seen that. I don't know if you've seen that. I think a lady returns to me like 9 years later with a receipt, and you're like, lady, stop.
Exactly.
Stop it.
Look, I can't hold on to a receipt for a week. I don't know how these people are able to hold on to a receipt for that long, but they're taking care of their warehouse club members. And so we're able to map and be very realistic about what we believe can be sold into the channel. Because what we don't want to do is we'd never want to, have a dealer stuck, right? Hey, I was relying on you, Paul. I was relying on Clover to make sure I had this amount of product for my stores this season, and you came up 50% short. That's leaves a really bad taste, in somebody's mouth when you're starting a relationship. And, so yes, we don't control sales or returns, but we have enough legacy information to say consumers are pretty typical. They're going to return this much across these channels. We're going to have this base to go work from. We already know all of our recovery rates, by SKU. I can tell you, hey, this product yields this much sellable product at the end, within probably 5% accuracy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Well, the questions that I really have that's worried me. Okay, let's say that you have a product and it's good. It's a good product, and I'm not going to mention any names. It just is what it is. It's a great product, and you have a good steady return flow, whether it's refurbished because of non-use or you actually have it broken, whatever. But so now that it's there, where does Clover fit into this has a particular high failure rate, regardless of the fact that I'm bringing it back and I'm doing a 100% certification, and then now it's back to where the manufacturer's specs are, and I'll put it back out there. But the failure rate is still, regardless, is still kind of high, right? So you say 10%, maybe this one has a 20, 25%. Where does Clover say, wait a minute, even if we refurbish it back to, there's a chance that, 1 in 4 are coming back. That's a little bit too high. Or what are the thresholds for that, for you to say, you know what, we don't want to put that out there rent to own, because, they do have a tendency to take things. Certain things do come back and they get re-rented, right? Even if we do something we will at that time try to do our own cleanup and make sure it works, but we're not as certified as some of the guys at Clover. So we're going to put it back out there. There's a high failure rate. It's just going to cost and time and money to go back through there. Where is that line drawn where Clover says, hey, you know what, this is probably not going to work? Or how do you get notified that this is one of those items that, hey, is starting to have a very high failure rate? How would that work in this situation?
So break it down in a couple pieces. One, because of the categories that we work in, they tend to be longer life in field, right? So while your tablet, phone, or laptop gets changed on a very regular basis by the brand owners, an air conditioner, might have originated in 2023 and is still the current model that's sold. So, the longer it's in field, the longer you find any of the issues. So, that said, we typically have visibility to, if we break this down into what we call the known knowns. So that is they've already known about the issue. Hey guys, just look for this. When this happens, you need to replace this part. Great. Thanks for that, heads up. Then there's the known unknowns. Hey, we've been hearing that there's an issue with this. Could you help us figure out what's going on with it? And then where we come in, and I think the greatest benefit we bring to our brand partners is helping to identify the unknown unknowns, right? So through our testing, we identify we see this failure, and it's not just a 1 in 1,000. We're seeing it 1 in 100, 1 in 60. So that's when our engineering team gets engaged, right? So we can divert product in the flow. Now, what does that really mean for a consumer? Ultimately, what it means is we are essentially creating a better product through refurbishment than new, right? So actual failure on new products, they've gotten good. Even your cheap product today is relatively reliable, right? Not necessarily you're not going to get a washing machine that lasts 20 years like when we were growing up, but you are going to have, for the most part, product that is sub 4, even sub 3% actual failure rate. Refurbished product is typically sub 1.2, right? So because we're weaning out product that shouldn't go back, and part of that could just be because we're evaluating it, how heavy was its use during its period? Oh, yeah, this has obviously had some use. No matter what we replace on it, not going to be the best thing to go back in the channel. Or this is 2 generations back. You see that a lot in window ACs. The only thing that changes is a couple codes in the model number. And that's just really telling you when was the design for that product brought to market. But you still see them getting sold. But we're like, the design's older now. It may be less efficient. We're typically looking for endemic failures. So our BI team is constantly monitoring all the quote unquote failure information that we capture. And it's really telemetry information, right? So we take product, when it moves into the testing process, we make it so it's less human dependent and more automation dependent, right? So as example, everybody understands a vacuum, right? They've had a vacuum in their whole life in their homes. When you talk about vacuums, a lot of times your suctions, one of the standards is related to what they call water draw. Basically, how hard can it suck, right? How bad does my vacuum suck? Or how good, right? At the end of the day. So we know the standards. So we can performance test something at the front of our line to determine the use of this. We can look at its, basically its running amperage for the motor, to decide, is it off spec, and weed that stuff out right away so it doesn't go to a future buyer. Because again, the worst thing that can happen is that new buyer of that refurbished product has an out-of-box experience that is less than worthy, right? Because at the end of the day, that may be their first time buying a GE Opal ice maker. And now they're like, oof, this thing's a little tough to set up, or it's making a weird noise, or, whatever. They're never going to buy a GE product again.
Well, that's kind of rough on the RTO dealer too, because you're going to be like, well, I got this product that doesn't work. You sold this to me, and look what's happening. Look what I got to go through. I don't trust you. Even if everything else I get from you is new, now I've got to worry, is it all going to be the same? Even if it has nothing to do with the RTO dealer, which leads me to this part now. So I know that warranty is different with new product, right? New product. I just, my wife got a car not that long ago, and we, 10-year, 100,000, whatever. When you do a recertified refurbished, I don't think there's a 10-year, 100,000-mile refurbishment title on it. So how does it work? If I'm an RTO dealer and it's sitting on my counter and I'm looking to sell that, Does it go from the date that I receive it in? Does it go from the date that it's sold? And how long does that warranty out there before I can, not make a claim on it?
So RTO is similar to any of our other business to business channels. So what we do is the clock starts when we ship it to our partner, and that magic number is a year. Now, there's a 90-day warranty from the time they first push it out into the market. So if at day 360, they finally rent that item out, it still has 90 days of warranty beyond that. So it's 90 days in the consumer's hand. We give a 1 year of runway for the rent-to-own dealer to get it into market. So it should give them plenty of coverage. The beauty is returns happen on the refurb side within the first 30 days, over 93% of the time. So, it's kind of one of those things where it's good at breakfast, it's going to be good at dinner, right? That type of thing. You don't have to worry. And again, that, from a failure rate being, less than a third of what new product is, the dealers are going to be in a really good spot with from a warranty perspective.
No, I've had a couple of good situations and a couple bad situations. So I'm not going to mention the brand that I'm going to talk about. There's a couple brands out there, but I've had some new product that come in and man, it's either bad in a box or bad within the first week. And you try to get a hold of the dealer and it's just like pulling teeth. It's just difficult. You finally get it done. And it just seems like it took way more time than it should have. A lot more was gone into it to get that done. If something happens, let's say within the first 90 days, I've got this ice maker out there. It either works or something happened, whatever the case, and now it doesn't. It gets brought back to me. What is my position and what do I need to do? Because that plays a big part in whether I'm going to carry a product or not. Can I get it taken care of? And can I get it taken care of with enough time for the customer to be satisfied? Because let's say I don't have another one, right? I mean, if I have 2, 3, it's great. I can just take it, swap it out, or I could just take it and say, hey, use this one until. If I don't, right, because let's say I'm trying it out. I bought 5 different items from you. None of them are the same thing. Ms. Jones comes in and now it's not working. I need to get that back to her as soon as possible, which plays a huge part in the rent to own because our service is built into the agreement. Yep. How does that work? How do I get a product in that may be malfunctioning for whatever particular reason? What happens? Is that a call back to the manufacturer? Is that a call to Clover? Do I call up Paul, on the bat phone and be like, Paul, this ain't happening, man. What's going on? Help me out. Like, how does that work out?
I mean, I do keep a red phone on my desk just for these emergencies, but, and you alluded to it earlier, right? We announced a partnership with L2 specifically because they've been engaged in the RTO space for so long. So, we are, I'm going to call it in the arc of rent to own, we are just young, right? In our engagement with the space. So we wanted to partner with somebody that could handle the distribution. It knows the players and the dealers really well, understands their needs in order to offer the best overall experience for the dealers, right? Again, I go back to the trust piece. Our job is to ensure that the consumer's trust in the brand is never impacted. L2's job is to ensure that the trust the dealers have in L2 can't be impacted. So when it comes to that bat phone part of it, right, it's going to be L2 that's going to be managing that piece, right? They already have the system set up for doing that. And so I think that's going to bring the best value is you take, Clover's 2,000 plus, employees, right? Processing millions and millions of units a year. L2 is laser focused on distribution into the rent-to-own space. So take what we're great at, take what they're great at, and it should be an amazing experience for the dealers.
So what I was reading here, it looks like some of the main products that we're carrying through L2 is the portable ACs, the vacuum cleaners, the stick vacs, the LG, and I don't know if I'm saying this right. Is it Tyneco? How is it?
Yeah, it's Tineco. Yeah,
Tineco. There you go. I'm learning, guys. I don't know that one.
Yeah.
I actually own one. I don't even know how to say it.
Do you really? Oh, nice.
blenders and juicers from the NutriBullet, and you got some countertop appliances from GE. Now, when it comes to ordering those things, now that you're through L2, because usually I would give them a call and say, hey, I need a couple laptops, need a couple gaming systems. What do you have on, what do you have on deck? They would say, hey, listen, I've got this one with this spec, this one with this spec. You can order 2, ship out. I mean, what does it take to get those orders done? If I was to call L2, is it a shipment amount? Is it a certain amount of pieces? How does that work?
And that's part of why we wanted to partner with them. They're much better doing mixed product shipments than we are. Our warehouses are very much set up to do full pallet or single piece, not mixed pallets of product. And so L2 is going to be taking stocking positions on the product so that, kind of the day-to-day orders just fulfill it. The larger ones, they will then be tapping in, and we'll be doing direct shipment out of our warehouses for them on that product. So I think it really covers the bases really well, because it allows them to continue on the relationship side, managing the dealer relationships, providing them not only, hey, I'm calling for a couple laptops and a couple of displays. Hey, get a couple GE Opal ice makers on there. I need 3 portable ACs. Now you get one pallet coming to you, and it has all that for the dealer. And that's such a better experience, right? And that's what we needed to be able to tap into. Our portfolio product that makes sense for the rent-to-own space isn't as broad, right, as a distributor. So I think it's going to work out really well. The L2 guys know the space really well. We know our industry, and we're going to give great product that they can then distribute and support.
Well, I'll say, you do have a great partner. I've seen L2 around for years and years, and we've done a lot of business throughout those years. So that brings me to my next point. I haven't known Clover for years and years, though. So can you give me a little history on Clover? Because, a lot of times what people don't want to do is say, hey, I see something new. But we've seen people go to Trip. We've seen people go to the RTO world. They've been there a year or two, and then what happens? I don't know. You know what happened to that guy? I don't know what happened to that guy. And, might have had a good idea or whatever, but I can always tell you it takes about 24 months to really break into it. And some people just don't have that staying power. What is the history of Clover? Where does it come from? How long has it been in business? What are we looking at when we say Paul is the chief revenue officer, right? Is that the CRO? Is that what they call you? The CRO. So know best of all, how long, what's the longevity of Clover? Where has it been and where is it going?
Yeah. So, we are celebrating our 30th year in business this year. The Clover business has changed dramatically over the years, right? So I'm going to call it 2 ways to look at our business. The full name is Clover Environmental Solutions. At the end of the day, we're helping companies, properly receive and manage and dispose of, commercial and consumer products. One of the biggest things that we do is we have a sustainable imaging group. So our sustainable imaging group is the world's largest remanufacturer of ink and toner. So every private label brand that you can buy at Staples, Office Depot, Walmart, etc., we remanufactured. That came from us. And it just ends up back on our retail shelf.
Anthony, do you have any toner that you need? I got the hookup. The hookup over here.
I do.
Got you covered.
Covered.
Yeah. And so you think about the pressure in that space. Clover's history comes out of managing products that are have a lot of IP around them, and so the engineering that we have built internally and the automation that we've built springs from that. The consumer product side is been in place for about 12 years. And really branched out into these adjacent spaces in 2023 through an acquisition of a company that had been around since 2002. So there's a long history of performing at a very high level across these consumer products that people are already shopping today, but they just don't realize, where it came from. When you look at, a product and you're like, oh, I didn't realize those were interchangeable. One says it's supposed to be from, Honda, but it's going in an Acura. Oh, okay. That's right. They're related companies. Similar to us, right? We are really, the horsepower behind a lot of remanufacturing that goes on here in North America.
There's something that's going on right now, and some people follow it, some people don't. It is what it is. The tariff situation has gone up and down and up and down, and right now I think it's down, and I think they're trying to figure out how to get back up. I have no idea how that's going to work out, but in the choice of that situation, when you have brand new product that has the tariffs and stuff like that, how does Clover react in those situations? Is it a better ball game when you hear, everybody's going, God, 20%, what are we going to do? Is that where Paul goes, yeah, I got you? Or is it eventually comes down and you're like, no, I don't want none of that. So, I mean, how does that affect the business? How does it affect an RTO dealer if somebody says, hey, now we got a 20% tariff on wherever these things are coming from? Because you're getting it on the back end and providing the parts and the check or the refurbishment certification, does your margin get better? Does it go from 20% to 25% difference, or is it the same and it kind of ebbs and flows with the brand new price of the product?
So, a couple things. We'll talk about, the impact of tariffs. So, my teams are both on the acquisition side, right, business development, and the sales side of the finished product. And, the biggest message we could bring to the brand owners who weren't already doing refurb or reman was, you've already paid for the product to be here. Why wouldn't you want to figure out a way to monetize it again, right? Sunk cost. It's already here. Let's transform it and build a secondary channel for it, especially when tariffs are high. You already paid a bunch, and maybe even, your container costs were probably out through the roof as well. Not as impactful if you're bringing a whole bunch of Nintendo Switches in the country. Super impactful if you're bringing air conditioners in the country, right? From a container standpoint.
Absolutely.
So it becomes more important. I would never say that an industry is recession proof or volatility proof, but if you think about returns, refurb, reman, when there's tightening up of an economy, people want to figure out a way to save money. Refurbished products make more sense, right? They see it as a value add. I can still get the product I want. I get it at a reduced cost. Times are great, and people are like, I got a bunch of disposable income. Well, they buy more stuff gets returned, and you still have buyers that want to do the right thing, right? I mean, Gen Z loves refurb. They understand the value of sustainability. They look at it as, hey, I want the flexibility of partnering with a brand that has the same thoughts as I do when it comes to what we're going to do to, manage our place in the world. So, tariffs, not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to the refurb side. When you talk about pricing, we tend to essentially do everything as a % of the standard retail price. Now, we take into account, do our partners have a MAP policy or no MAP policy? Because at the end of the day, if they don't, well, we need to make sure what's the real price this product is selling for new. Yeah, they may say, hey, it's $399. Yeah, I'm finding it everywhere for $249, right? So that's the price we're going to go off of. But the thought is velocity, not gouging. For us, the benefit to our clients isn't just in creating new revenue streams. It's also the access to the data that we give them related to the consumer experience of that product, right? Every return at the end of the day, in theory, is because something was wrong. Maybe it's just they made a wrong buying decision, but also it could have been they didn't understand how to set up the product. It didn't meet their expectations from a performance standpoint. Well, does that mean you need to change your listing online for that product and how you describe it? For me, I got my glasses on, I take them off. I have a hard time seeing you. I go look at labels sometimes or instruction manuals. And one of the best first feedbacks I give to my clients is your stuff's printed in 6-point font. Even with my glasses on, I'm having a hard time seeing that. So the ability to give them feedback on their product usage, basically condition after, being in the field for 1 month versus 6 months versus, a year, that's highly valuable. So we help them understand the fact that the product they're getting back, there's no better way to inform your decision for your future product than looking at the product that's getting returned. And so for the consumers in the rent-to-own space, we're going to help de-risk them from an inventory standpoint, from a cost during times of volatility, right, in market prices. Yes, you could see it creep up a bit, but at the same time, we don't creep. If it goes up 20%, we may be going up 2 or 3%, right, on the sale price of
Okay.
that product.
Okay.
Because again, keep the product moving is more important than trying to optimize the recovery dollar.
Hey everyone, it's Pete Shau here from the RTO Show Podcast, and I want to tell you about a company that's making a real difference in the rent-to-own space. Wow Brands. I've seen firsthand how they approach marketing. And let me tell you, it's not just about ads. Wow Brands builds complete digital ecosystems designed specifically for the rent-to-own industry. Their e-commerce and lead generation strategies are built to bring in qualified leads. And did I mention that they are actively working with the rent-to-own industry while also being members of APRO and TRIB? Listen, these folks are passionate problem solvers. They don't just slap something together, they design, build, and scale the kind of digital retail tools your business needs and your customers actually want. So if you're serious about growing, reach out to Wow Brands at wowbrands.com. I trust them, and I think you will too. So what categories then is Clover getting into? Because when we're talking about, at the end of the second quarter, going into the third quarter, you want to know what's coming up, right? You want to know be able to pre-sell your customers and say, hey, I heard this was coming down the pipe. This is not something that you were able to get last year, but this is something that you can get now, right? So I'm going to push those sales. I'm going to try to put it in my flyer. I need to, going like really 12 weeks out from Black Friday, I need to know, what am I going to put in there? How am I going to design it? What looks good? Is there anything that comes up when Clover says, hey, this is my lineup? How do you know what's coming up new? And are you expanding into new spaces where Clover can say, hey, this is not something that we had before, but we're getting there now? I mean, you let me know how does that work?
Yeah. So we have kind of what I'll call our home base of categories we work in. Right. And so, that's typically floor care, premium countertop appliance, home environment. And where we're growing is in home automation and some kind of general consumer electronics, right? So I'm not going to be the RTO dealer's best friend for Xbox and PS5s, but where we are growing into TVs and soundbars, which, after going to RTO World, I did see that there was a bit of a need on the soundbar and sound equipment side specifically. I felt like that was a bit underserved, and there was a lot of folks very interested in it that would stop by our booth. The other piece is, looking at that TV space. What I don't know yet, and this is part of why I'm very excited to go to the Trib show here. What was it, less than a week away? To understand what size TVs are people most interested in the RTO space. Is it just 55, you kind of have a more standard set, or do we want all the way up through 85s? And heck, being at CES this year, right, 120-inch TVs are coming, right?
Oh,
Right.
God.
Yeah.
I wish I could. I don't know if I have a wall that big, but I wish I could.
Yeah. At that point, just get an ultra short throw, projector,
I agree. I so agree with that too, but
yeah. And that's another category, right, that we're looking at. And I go there almost from a wanting to learn more. It's very educational to me. Omaha was super educational this past year. And every time I go, I get a better understanding of what the dealers are hungry for, right? Things that they know that they would love to have, in their inventory. If I can de-risk them from a cost standpoint, maybe they want to take a better position on it, that, because they don't feel as that they're really going out on a limb so much. And then I can turn back to my business development team and say, hey, who are we talking to that fits this need, this space, right? So then we can go to a potential client and say, not only can we handle the returns, but look at this amazing channel that is available for you to sell your product into. And I think that's been, for us, such a positive, because so many brands, certain brands, they don't want to see their product back on Amazon. They don't want to see it on eBay. But telling them that, hey, I've got this great offline channel, that hits a new consumer base, that essentially gives them an access point, an entry point to your product and your brand. They go, oh, that's super interesting to me. Because either they haven't sold there historically, or they just see it as an underserved channel for them. So we can bring that to them. So, TV soundbar, right, is going to be, one area we're looking at heavily for everybody. I don't picture that, things like home automation, you're not going to, I don't think the dealers are going to want, smart locks and stuff like that. Probably not a big mover for them. Maybe.
Yeah, well, you don't want to be, when you're renting a product like that, you don't want to say, well, my lock failed and somebody walked in my house. That's your fault.
Yeah,
I'll stay away from that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And if the contract ends badly, then you got to go collect a lock off a door.
Right.
that just sounds terrible. I mean,
that is a bad thought. That is a terrible thought.
Yeah, but we're going to keep pushing into more premium coffee products. I think that's a really aspirational brand. Coffee is such a big category for people. It's a money saver for the consumers to be able to say, "Hey, I've got this coffee addiction. Hand to God, I do as well. Can I just spend $2 a day to fill it versus $7 a day?" And that's a huge win.
Yeah, no, I agree with that because listen, right now the cost of everything is going up, and the further that it goes up, the more, what we're getting paid is just not following with. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes, and we got to find a way to negotiate our pricing as best as we can. And that's usually eating at home, going to the grocery store versus going to the restaurant down the street, and it makes a difference. So, how long have you been with Clover?
So Clover bought my company in 2023. So
okay,
I was an addition in June of 2023. Coming from a company that I didn't start, but I was a partner in starting back in 2017. But I'm a reverse supply chain nerd. I've been doing this now for 33 years. It's all I know. My poor wife, we can't go shopping without me being like, I don't know that brand. Hold on. Let's go look at that. And so she's used
That's too expensive. I can get that somewhere else, babe.
Oh, that's the worst part. I literally will always be like, I'm sure I can figure out who does the refurb for them. Let me go, and she's like, can we just not buy it new? Please, can we just not buy it new? I'm like, okay, fine. But it's such an exciting space because it's so different, right? Everything that we're doing, checks all the boxes, right? Good for your pocketbook, good for the planet, good for people, right? And so check. I mean, I'm not saving babies. I'm not trying to say anything like that. But what we are doing is we're providing a valuable service to our brand partners, but also to the consumers that get to take that product next. And I think that's probably one of the most important things, right? So, the rent-to-own dealers, we want to help them reach younger customers, right? The ones who care about, sustainability. It's kind of built in their DNA now that they align with brands that are sustainability focused. We want, to be able to give them really good premium brands to put in the stores. We want to help them protect those margins. And if it makes sense, tell a sustainability story, right? Talk about the fact that, hey, what you just bought or rented, here's how it got to you, right? And starting with the fact that, hey, it's all been tested. It has a warranty. You can be confident in it. The brand's only going to choose a good partner because they care about their brand. I think that's the win. I really do.
Well, you mentioned earlier that, you have to be able to have some feedback, and it goes back and forth between Clover and the dealer as far as whoever it is that's selling to you, whether it be LG or GE or whatever the case is. And you go back and forth and say, hey, this is something that we've seen coming up, or they come to you and say, hey, this is probably an idea of what we can think of because of this part, whatever the case is. Does that work the same way with the RTO dealers? Because sometimes, one of the things that makes a dealer feel more secure about the products that they have is being able to go back to the manufacturer and say, listen, we beat it up probably more than a lot of other people do, or at least we get the feedback from it because we do get returns. There are some people that buy new, it doesn't work, they throw it in the trash. They don't ever say anything to anybody. They'll tell their friends or whatever. But if we're doing constant returns, or we're in contact with that customer every single week, bi-weekly, monthly, we have that relationship. And if it's not working right, believe me when I tell you, before they make that payment, they're going to let us know, hey, this ain't right. So is there a line that goes back and forth between the RTO, dealers, the ones that are on the front lines, and Clover or L2 or however it works, to say, hey, we see something in this product and it might need to be addressed? Or is that not something that is available?
Pete, you might be on the payroll soon. So shame on me that I've not thought about that one. That is, so like we have services that essentially scrape reviews, and NPS scores and everything for the products that we touch. What I don't have, and because so much of what we sell either goes through a marketplace or goes through, into a value retailer, et cetera, we don't get a feedback loop like that. But to have access to something like that, we could formalize in a way that maybe it's a monthly or a quarterly, push to the dealers that bought product to give feedback on it would be monumental. Like I know my brand partners would eat that up, because we could then turn that into actionable engineering projects, either internally or back with our brand partners. And you're right. I mean, I'm the toughest tester of our product, right? I'll have stuff shipped to my house. I think my wife's tired of how many blenders we have, how many vacuums, et cetera. But it's because I want to make sure that what we're putting out, and it's always blind, right? I don't tell my teams that I'm ordering one in. I want to know what was my out of box experience, and can I find something wrong with it? But having a direct connection with the dealers, that's huge. Yeah, I'm going to be figuring that one out over the next week, and talking to the team that while we're with L2 at the booth next week.
Well, I mean, it's something that we've had to, and some other dealers have done it. And I know it resonated well with people who are taking in products that they're not 100% sure of, to be able to say, listen, I don't know exactly how this is going to work. I don't know how this is actually going to land. But if I have somebody's ear to know that I have a say, and maybe it's going this way or it's going that way, and we can change that to be better off for the customer, better off for the end result, for the payoff in 3 months, 4 months, 10 months, whatever the case is, whether it's a hotline, whether it's an email. I know that the dealers felt so much better in being able to say, hey, I've had 3 of these, and 3 of these consistently, like right at day 31, whatever the case is. And I'm not saying that's it, but whatever the case is, they can say, and they see it, because it can possibly go out and come back and go out and come back. And so it gets worn and utilized in different ways by different people. And then that same product finally comes back and they say, man, I remember cleaning this, or I remember doing this. It dented here or stopped there. And being able to say, hey guys, this is something that's really, really important to us.
So Pete, let's pull on that thread for a second and put you on the spot. So
Sure.
What do you think is better for the dealers? Kind of a dedicated email that could go with every product, a little sticker on the outside that says, hey, if you ever have any questions, concerns, and want to give feedback to Clover, send an email to this, or a monthly survey that we would send out to the dealers that bought product to say, hey, to give feedback. What do you think would resonate better?
I'm going to be honest with you. So the RTO industry is huge, but fractured. So it's made up of a lot of smaller dealers. So unless you're literally talking to Aaron's or Rent-A-Center, you have so many people that do so many different things. So out of a few thousand stores, you have a big RTO dealer would be like 100, right? Or 200.
Yeah.
That's not, the same as the Rack and the Aaron's where you're in 1,000 mark. So if I had to say, I would say both. I would say if you can set up an automated system to drop on the first day or the last day of every single month, just to send out that thing for the RTO dealers, that, let's say if I have 1 to 5 stores, I might be running around and doing 10 different things every single day, and it just might not be on my mind. Doesn't mean that I don't mean to call, but it means that I'm just very, very busy. And if I can get back to it and say, you know what, I have this, I didn't do it last month, but they reminded me with this email, boom, let me get it. Then you have people that have, a larger amount of stores where they have office time that they can sit back and say, hey, I've got these 3 guys that have said this 3 different times. I want to reach out right now. And,
Nice.
maybe it's the case that it's just a dedicated email and you get a response back, like, hey, this is Paul Adamson. I am looking at this and I will get back to you within 48 hours, whatever the case is. So that you have that redundancy regardless. If they're never going to hit you up because they just don't find the time, and they get the email, they can do that from home. They can do it when they have, easy time in the office, when they get in there 7 a.m. or they're staying late till 9. And then you have the guys that are, because you have certain dealers, RTO dealers that have the guys that are, they're in the refurbishment department, right? So they might have, if they have 20, 30 stores, they might have somebody or 1 or 2 dedicated to just doing that, and they see it. And if they have a phone number and it's not their email that you're sending that to, they can call you directly. So that would be my solution to it. And I think the more avenues you have, the better it is. Now, at the end of a year, You can say, hey, we're getting more emails than we're getting calls, or we're getting more calls and we're getting emails, and we want to up the ante on one or the other to make it more efficient for the dealer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would go, but I would definitely try it both ways.
Okay. No, that's a great point. And I'll get that implemented very quickly because I love that, right? That direct feedback is so important. Yeah, it could be a game changer.
Well, that's what we want to do. We want to make it good, Paul. I mean, I'm just saying,
I know.
you know?
I know.
I
mean,
I want to get a kickback, Paul. I'm looking for an ice maker. I'm just saying. So, rephrase that. My wife's looking for an ice maker. So,
yes, your wife is definitely looking for an ice maker. But
my wife is definitely, she's going to watch this and be like, did you get the ice maker?
Exactly. That's the only thing that's going to come out of it. She's like, ice maker?
I don't know anything you said, but the ice maker.
I heard ice maker.
So real quick,
awesome.
because, coming into the end, I mean, we have these discussions and it's always about how do we get better? How do we know what we're getting into? And is it good for the customer? Is it good for us? Is it good for the margins, right? We always want to carry something that's good for them, but also good for the dealer. It's got to make sense for us and for the community that we serve. And it sounds like, Clover's trying to check off a lot of those boxes, and whether we do some things that got feedback or get into something that has feedback. I think the idea of partnering with L2 is a very good idea because they are well known within their RTO space and they can serve us very, very well. So I think that's a great thing. I want to ask you some quick fire questions, and I want to put you on the spot. Now, I'm not going to throw in my wife needs an ice maker yet, but if you were to say, and this is just an honest question, what would you say, is the biggest upside for using Clover right now?
Quality products, right? So when the dealers are going to explain certified refurbished, they will have a confidence that it's backed by a company that's been doing it for 30 years.
Okay. Most misunderstood metric when it comes to having a certified refurbished product on your counter?
Probably the total value prop for that product, right? So you are able to save money on your original purchase as a dealer. So you've de-risked yourself from an inventory position. You've got a great story to be able to tell the next generation of buyers. So they're going to be focused on the sustainability side, the overall narrative of that brand. For your standard, I'm going to call it us Gen Xers or others that maybe are not as first, driven by the sustainability equation. We like a good deal. Well, you're able to provide a good deal. So when you're thinking about checking the boxes, this is a product that sits on your counter that understands the reality of the market today, which is there's a lot of pricing pressure on people, right? People are feeling the kind of the extremes of the cost of products in general. So you're helping them understand that this is a better valued product. It has the same quality. They can feel comfortable in the fact that the brand has anointed this company to provide this service. And at the end of the day, they're also helping to create a better world by buying a refurbished or remanufactured product.
Okay. What is, in your opinion, one category of refurbished product that maybe somebody in the rent-to-own industry should avoid?
Oh, that's interesting. I would look at things with large battery packs. So, e-bikes, portable power stations, unless they're buying them directly from the from the brand certified partner, only because batteries degrade at different rates, and you can end up with a lot of challenges around that. So uncontrolled battery management is still a huge challenge in the space. The other part around that is meeting the requirements for shipping a rechargeable battery these days is much more complicated. And so what you don't want to be is the receiver of a product that was shipped incorrectly.
I can tell you right now, there's nothing like a lithium ion battery fire. That thing is unbelievable.
Yes.
And last but not least, question that I want to ask Paul Adamson, the CRO of Clover. What is one category that you would say you should double down on?
As a dealer, I would probably focus pretty big on premium countertop appliance. That coffee space, there's a reason everybody's moving into it, and you could capitalize upon it. I would, in my world, I would lean into semi-automatic espresso machines over fully automatic. Less things that can go wrong, less complication for your consumer. But there's the Breville product is amazing, other brands as well. And I think it would bring a lot of value to your consumers.
Well, guys, we've tried to get Paul to shook up a little bit, not Clover around a little bit. They seem to be doing all right. I think he's done his homework a little bit. I don't know what happened. You must be on the bat phone because you changed backgrounds real quick on me. I didn't know what happened. You did it so fast. I don't even know what happened, but I do want to say I do appreciate you being on today. Paul, it's been great to have you on here. If somebody wanted to reach out to Clover and make that choice and see how you are, do they contact L2? They contact you? Can you give them a little bit of information for that so that they can find out where you guys are at and start utilizing it?
Yep. So if they're going to be purchasing product for their stores, it'll go through R2. If they just have general questions about refurbishment, remanufacturing, the standards, I'm more than happy for them to reach out to me or a member of my team. I don't know if I just need to rattle off my email address or if you'll post it at the end in the comments.
We're going to do both. So if you want to give us email address, we'll post it down on the lower third. That way everybody gets to understand one way or the other. We know how to get a hold of you, but go ahead.
Sure. So Paul.Adamson, so ADAMSON at cloveres.com. And happy to address your questions. Love the engagement. And if you want to be, we'll call it a guinea pig for general feedback from the rent-to-own space, would love to hear that as well, and what would work best for you for giving that feedback.
I tell you guys what, it looks like clovers.com because that's actually what I thought it was, and I got corrected. It's Clover Environmental Services. But Paul.Adamson at clovers.com. Guys, I'll tell you, as always, we do appreciate having Paul on here. I can tell you what, I've seen it. If you guys have an opportunity, make sure you stop by their booth and take a look at them. If not, give them a call, see if you can reach out on email, and maybe they can send you a little bit of a lineup so that you can have an idea of what they do and how it can serve you. I'll tell you guys, as always, we appreciate you being here. And Paul, make sure that you check us out on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, where you're going to see this. Paul, I want to tell you, I do appreciate taking your time. Let me kind of throw a couple jabs at you. And I'm going to tell you guys, as always, get your collections low to get your sales high. Have a great one.